Hey, good morning, everybody. It's Thursday morning. It's the 29th annual People First of West Virginia statewide conference. I can't believe it's been 29 years, and it's the third year that we're doing a virtual version due to the pandemic. But I'm really glad to be here, and I'm glad that you all are out there too. This morning, we're going to talk about gardening and cooking all in 1 hour. And instead of actually doing actual gardening, what I thought we might do is do something that's more cooking related and kind of canning related, but it's not canning, but it's preserving. So we're going to do the recipes that are in your folder that are the refrigerator pickles. This one says refrigerator sweet pickles. This one is Clausen style refrigerator dill pickles. Now I know everybody has a preference. I personally like sweet and dill pickles both, but I thought we'd do both, and I can show you how simple these are to make. You can make these from fresh garden cucumbers if you have a garden or you have a neighbor who shares with you. You can use store-bought cucumbers, which is what I did for today's purposes. They have these mini cucumbers that you can buy at the store. They're really nice. They don't have very big seeds. And when we do the dill pickles, you'll see how nice they are. You make your own pickle spears. And also, I happen to have an English cucumber that I needed to use. And this is a long cucumber. I've trimmed this one. But it's a long cucumber that is usually all by itself, wrapped in plastic, like shrink wrapped. And these are really nice too. These are more digestible for some people. They have basically no seeds, and you can kind of see the end. And these are preferable for people especially who just like want one cucumber at home for a meal or a salad over a couple of days. When you live alone, it's pretty handy to get just one nice cucumber. So either of these will work. Fresh garden cucumbers. I've used all kinds of cucumbers for pickles, so if someone says, oh, those don't work because they're not picklers, which is a kind of cucumber that you grow in your garden, that's not necessarily true. I have canned just about every kind of pickle or cucumber there is into a pickle. By the way, I want to mention too, you probably noticed I have a blood spot in my eye, so I'm sorry, it might look kind of funny, but it's going away, just not fast enough for me to do it or let it go away before we did the class. So anyway, let's get rolling. This particular one we're going to do first is the refrigerator sweet pickles, and I bet that's backwards on your screen. But it's the less complicated recipe, and all we have to do is cut the ends off of the cucumbers, and hopefully I can get to where you can see me a little bit. I have a little bowl over here, like a garbage bowl like Rachel Ray has, so keep things a little neater. Now you can cut them with a knife, or another fun thing to do is this wavy cutter. I'll let you maybe see, it's got like a wavy edge, and when you see pickles in the store that have a cut, like a crinkle cut, this is how you do it. It's literally just this crinkle cutter, and it makes these really cool crinkly pickles. So that's another option you can do. I'm going to do some of these wavy, and then some of them maybe I'll do straight cut and show you. These do not need to be very thick. Matter of fact, it's better if they're not really super thick because they absorb the brine easier. One of the things I really like about this recipe, and by the way, the cucumbers are washed first, is that it pretty much takes the brine on really quickly. So you can honestly eat these almost immediately, which is pretty nice when you're craving pickles. So if you can see, they're not very thick. You can go thinner for that matter. If you like real thin little pieces of pickle, like on a McDonald's hamburger comes, they're super thin. So what we're going to do is throw this in our bowl. And I'm going to cut up this English cucumber also and put in here. Now the recipe calls for 3.5 cups of washed and unpeeled cucumber. And I'm just going to cut this up, throw it in the bowl, just to make things go a little quicker. So mine may not quite fit our quart jar. I purposely took these recipes I have, and I use these pretty much every year. And I cut them down to where it would only make 1 quart for each recipe, because it seemed like that would be a lot more usable for folks that live alone or a couple people in the household. Sometimes if I get free cucumbers, somebody shares cucumbers with me in the summer or whatever, then I'll make up several quarts of these if I have room in my refrigerator. And the dill especially, the Clausen style dills, because I really like those. And I will put them in the fridge, and honestly, they last weeks and weeks. I have actually eaten refrigerator pickles that I had in the refrigerator for a year. And you know what? They were still great. So, if you just want an occasional pickle and you kind of want to do something yourself, this is a good way to do it. The other thing it calls for is a red bell pepper diced up, and you want a 1/2 cup. I like just cutting them in strips, a piece of the pepper, and then cutting across those strips to dice them. If you don't like bell pepper very much, you can easily leave this out. You can use green pepper or no peppers, because honestly, this is really for color. It really looks pretty in the jar. There's a little bit of flavor involved, but not really as much as it's just for color. And I think I've showed you guys before, I used to try to cut bell peppers, cut around the core, clean out the inside, did all that. And one day I saw a chef on TV do something really cool like 30 years ago, and I've been doing it ever since. Instead of going through all that, you literally cut down, my knife needs sharpened, down the side of the pepper, and you get a piece that looks like this. You can trim and clean out that little bit. You do that all the way around the pepper, and you literally have nothing left but the core and a couple little trimmings. So that's a whole lot easier than trying to cut the center out of your pepper and scoop out the seeds and all those things. So a little bit more pepper to go in our bowl to make about a 1/2 cup. And this doesn't have to be exact either, because, you know, just fitting in a quart jar, really. So, let me get my scooper. So we're going to take these, put them in the bowl. And then we need an onion. 1 onion is all we need for this, because it only calls for about a 1/2 cup of sliced onion. So this is another thing that you could skip if you wish. I like onions a lot, so I rarely ever skip onion in anything that it comes in. You could dice these. I like to just take a sliver of onion or a piece off the side and cut it into pieces more than slices. So we're going to do that and throw that in the bowl. Put a spoon here. So you can see these look really pretty. I have to say that the red pepper, pretty nice in there. It looks lovely. If you like bread and butter pickles, which is my favorite home canned pickle, then this is something that you probably will really like, because it's got a very similar sweet flavor. If you're not a sweet pickle fan, hang on. We're going to get to the not sweet pickles. So the next thing is you're going to make our brine. The brine calls for 1/2 cup of vinegar, a teaspoon of salt, a cup of sugar, and 1.5 teaspoons of celery seed. Celery seed is something, and a lot of these seasonings I'm going to show you today, celery seed is something that you can get pretty inexpensively. This, for example, I don't know if you can read the sticker backwards, but it's from Ollie's store and it was 97 cents. Works perfectly fine. If you go to the grocery store, there's brands like McCormick's, and with a little tiny thing, actually I can show you the size. A little tiny thing like this, not McCormick, but something this size in celery seed would cost like $4. I got this little thing at Ollie's for 99 cents, and it's thyme leaves. But this is so much better of a deal, and it works just perfectly fine. And I'll show you what celery seed looks like. Celery seed is super tiny, but it has lots and lots of flavor. So, I made the brine ahead of time. Instead of making it in the bowl, I made it in a quart jar. I use Splenda today because I'm the one that's going to be eating these pickles after they're done. I found out I was type 2 diabetic a couple of months ago, so any place that I can cut back and not use sugar, and I could use Splenda or something similar in its place, is what I'm doing. So you can use sugar, or you can use a sugar substitute that you like. This is never heated, so it doesn't matter if the sugar substitute isn't one that does well in the heat. So just to let you know. So you pour that all over the vegetables. And then you stir it up really well. And it's really pretty. You can make extra of this brine if you like. If you want your pickles in the jar to be really well covered. Sometimes it covers real well. Sometimes your veggies are kind of chunky and it doesn't. Now I'm using wide mouth quart jars today to show you what to put these in. But you don't have to have canning jars. This, for example, this is a pickle jar that I saved from pickles I got at Aldi's. I just thought it was cool. So I saved this. So this is the kind of jar you can use as well. Anything, honestly, with a lid that stays on pretty tight so you can shake it a little is perfect. You can use Tupperware containers or the soup containers that you get like Chinese soup in from your favorite Chinese restaurant. Always work. So something like this will work just fine. Don't feel like you have to have canning jars. So you put all this into the jar. Let's get this back so you can see better. So we're just going to scrape everything into the jar, including that brine. And maybe I made too much from the jar. Maybe we'll see here. Shake this down. And I'm going to need more brine for mine, obviously, because I made my veggies so chunky. But you get the idea. You put a lid on this, put it in the fridge. You can eat them almost right away, like for evening dinner tonight would be fine. You put a lid on it that's pretty nice, tight-fitting lid. A canning jar lid's fine, or you can use any other lid that works for this. And you refrigerate them. I like to turn them back and forth and shake them up so the brine covers everything really nicely. So these are your sweet pickles. And they're really delicious. Give them a try. Not expensive to make, especially if you get free cucumbers. So that's our first recipe. Now, we rinse out our funnel. And get some more cucumbers. And we're going to work on these dill pickles. Now, the only reason these dill pickles are a little more complicated is because there's several seasonings in their brine, or in the jar. That's what gives them their really good dill flavor. And the pickles that these are similar to are the store-bought Clausen dill pickles that you only can get in the refrigerator section. They're not on the shelf. They can't stay out of refrigeration. So I love those, and they're very expensive in my opinion. So when I found this recipe, I thought it was a great solution, and I enjoy them just as much. So it's really fun to make these, and again, not very expensive. the only investment really is the spices. And most of these you can get, like I said, at the store in the 99-cent section, the Dollar Tree, your local Ollie's, sometimes Aldi's store. And once you have them, especially in sizes like the celery seed that I showed you, and you're gonna, for $1, you're gonna be able to make numerous batches of these pickles and not have to repurchase these. So, you know, maybe share them with a friend too if they like these pickles. So, what we do for these is we still trim, we still trim the ends off a little bit. These are not home canned pickles, of course, they're just French pickles. Home canned pickles, it's recommended that you trim off the blossom end, and where it grows from the blossom. The feeling is that there's enzymes in the end that can cause your pickles to not be crispy. I sometimes forget that, and I honestly don't see a lot of difference. So, your directions say, wash and slice your cucumbers into round slices or long spears. I like these in long spears. And that just means we're going to cut down the pickle lengthwise, and then you can leave them like that, these small ones. A half is a really nice spear. If you had a bigger pickle, you could cut the halves again. But I kind of like these small halves. So we're going to do these down the middle. Now here's a little bit bigger one, and I'll show you. I cut the halves in half. So now we have these pickle spears. These look a little bit more like the kind you're used to seeing from the store probably. So cut the cucumbers. Cut them however you want. If you like dill pickle chips instead, that's fine. Cut them in circles just like we did the sweet pickles. So then, put your pickles in the jar. I kind of like to hold my jar to the side or lay it down if you need both hands. Hold these, and stick them in like this. I like to stand them up. I need a few more to fill up my jar. So I'll cut these little babies right here. Put those in the garbage bowl. Alright, so got some more little skinny halves here. Holding my jar. Like I said, you can lay this down. If you need both hands, no problem. Or if you don't have a free hand, no problem. You can lay this jar down on a counter or on something, on a dish towel to keep it from rolling. And let's see, I can fit one more in there. There we go. So, see, they look pretty nice. They're all just kind of stood up in the jar. You can see from the top. You can pack them like this, or you can pack them randomly if you want to. Doesn't really matter. Okay, then the little task here is this long list of seasonings, but it's worth it. So the first one is 1.5 teaspoons of dill seed. No, on my water bottle. I use a good bit of dill seed, dill weed, and other pickling spices. So I often have bulk spices and seeds that I have in jars just to keep them fresh, because the container they came in may have not been as good. I have these spoons that are all on a little ring so they don't get lost. So there's 1 teaspoon, and here's my 1/2 teaspoon. And you don't have to be perfect with this. I want you to see what the dill seeds look like. And it's off the dill plant. When dill grows, it has feathery little fronds that is dill weed, and then it has seeds when it goes to seed, and those are harvested, and both have a lot of dill flavor. So it's really neat to use both because you get a really nice depth of dill flavor. So the next one on the list is Oh my goodness. It said dill seed, but I was supposed to type weed there. So we need 1.5 teaspoons of dill weed. So you might want to correct that on your paper because I typed it wrong. So dill weed is kind of like it says. It kind of looks like, honestly, like chopped up grass, dry grass, or oregano that's all crushed up or something. So it looks similar probably to something you've seen before. So there's a whole teaspoon. And here's a half teaspoon. Next on the list, minced garlic. And it's in my fridge. Hang on. I knew I'd forgotten something to put out here on my table. Minced garlic. You can put fresh garlic minced in here. I don't happen to have any fresh garlic, which is awful right now, but I also keep pretty large jars of pre-minced garlic from the store. You can get these in those little tiny jars, which is great if you don't have a lot of use for garlic. It's minced up, ready to go. If you like garlic, it smells fabulous. And we need a teaspoon of minced garlic in the jar. So rather than peeling and chopping garlic, that's all we had to do. Next, a half teaspoon of mustard seed. Mustard seed. You can see. That's how it looks. A half teaspoon of mustard seed. In the jar. This seems like a lot of trouble, I know. And then we have peppercorns, which I don't have out here, so I'm going to skip that for a second. And gosh, I have to get them anyway because I forgot the allspice. So up in my cabinet, and I would show you, but I'd have to turn the camera around. I have rearranged all my spices the other day, and honestly, it took like an entire day because I had so much stuff. And I threw some things away, got a new turntable, so I could put everything up here organized. And I'm laughing at myself because when I got all organized, now I can't find anything. Does it ever happen to you when you like reorganize things and then they're not where they were for the last 5 years and you have no clue what you did with it? So that is exactly what's happened to me right this minute. I'm looking right in my cabinet and I can't find what I want. So we're just going to skip those and I'll put them in during the break when I find them. So I need peppercorns and powdered allspice. They're in the cabinet hiding from me that I hid from myself apparently. So then a 1/4 teaspoon of hot pepper flakes. And that is the same hot pepper flakes that you find often in shakers in Italian restaurants, like people like to put on spaghetti. You can put more in here if you want a spicier pickle. I'm just going to stick with the recipe. And then you need a 1/4 teaspoon of sugar or Splenda. And I have some Splenda right here. So that's what I'm going to put in since I'm going to be the one that's eating these later. All right. Now, the next part of the directions say 2 cups of distilled water, 1/2 cup of vinegar, and 1 tablespoon of kosher or fine kosher or canning salt, and you bring it to a boil and then you let it cool. I have done that in advance so that we don't have to wait for it to cool. And it's in this pitcher right here, the stainless steel pitcher. And so what I did, it says distilled water. Well, I usually don't keep distilled water at home. And the solution is use filtered water, bottled water, spring water instead. You need 16 ounces of water, because that is 2 cups. There's 16.9 ounces in here. Perfect. So for one recipe of this is all you need, is a bottle of water. Also, I use canning salt because it's something I have on hand. Don't worry if you don't have canning or kosher salt. Just use regular salt for this. It's fine. And the vinegar that I use is white vinegar. I just like the clarity of it because it's clear. But if you have apple cider vinegar, the brown vinegar works great. So all you do is pour the brine over all the spices and the cucumbers. You don't always have brine left over. Sometimes you do. Sometimes you need to make a tiny bit more. Depends on how tight you packed your cucumbers. But in our case, this works fine. Now, you can tap or jiggle the jar a little bit. See the bubbles? There's air in between those cucumbers where I packed them. And you can like tap the jar a little bit, and that helps the air come up and the brine fill in between the cucumbers. So you put your lid on this, and that's it. You put it in the fridge. Now, sometimes this will cloud up after it sits a little while and then clear back up, and that's fine. I like to give these Clausen style dills, I should say. I like to give these about a week before I try them. They just taste, I know, they're really, really good. So anyway, that's where we are with the pickles. And sorry about the eye again. This is where we are with the pickles. These are refrigerator pickles. It's a method of preserving, a way to make your own. It's a good way to use excess cucumbers out of the garden, or the ones that your neighbor shared with you to theirs, or store-bought cucumbers from the garden or the store. So there you go. That's our little gardening / preserving segment. Hopefully next year we'll be able to do an in-person canning and gardening session. So I'm going to get this cleaned up, and I'm going to be back, and we're going to go into cooking. See you in a few.